Welcome to Eugene Cannabis TV, episode 600. You believe it? 600 episodes. We've been doing this and been having a ball doing it. Hey, this is DanK, formerly DanK Bagman, back in the day, and we're here and by myself today. We have no guests. Always looking for guests. So think about that and come on the show. We're out here Monday nights behind the Sheldon High School at the Community TV studios. It's 7:30 in the evening. You can always stop by and say hi, watch what we do, or if you want to join in, that's even better yet. So it's all up to you. But anyway, exciting things are going on. Our Oregon Legislature is going back in session for 35 days. This is a short session year. Unfortunately, the Oregon voters decided to have the legislature meet every year instead of every other year, which just gives them an opportunity to screw things up even more, that's my opinion. But anyway, so they're going in session as of today, the day we film, which is February 1st, and tomorrow, February 2nd, again, this is already happened by the time you see this, but I'm just giving you some background. Tuesday, February 2nd, so we're having a rally, talk to your congressman type of thing up in Salem. So that's tomorrow and Tuesday. But you can still participate in a rally like this because on February 8th, which is Monday, February 8th at 12 p.m. is Cannabis Lobby Day at the Capitol. Real important. If you could get you and some friends up there, go up to Salem, you can meet a lot of great supporters of cannabis. And we need the numbers. The Oregon Legislature is insisting that they know best how to regulate and how to take care of all this whole marijuana question. And they are clueless and they're biased. Even my own state senator in Springfield, Lee Byers, has it wrong. His comment about Measure 91 as well, it's a statute, we can change it, we can change it. He also said he didn't think that the voters really understood what they were voting for. So so he's the all-knowing, and he knows more than the voters do. So it's a very dangerous kind of a politician, and that's just one example of the clowns we have in Salem. So anyway, it's real important to get to these rallies, and I'm going to the one tomorrow. I had to make some changes in my life to make it, but I'm going to be there, and like I said, we need the numbers. Again, on February 8th, I plan on being in that one too. So I'll be, anyway, share all this stuff, information. You can get a hold of me at dankbagman@hotmail.com. That's D-A-N-K, dankbagman, hotmail.com. I'll definitely give you the info on what's going on. And I got a story kind of related to this whole thing at the end of the second segment, so we'll be talking about that. But right now I want to talk about our friend John Walsh. The memorial is coming up. We had one in Portland January 12th, and coming up February 13th, we're having one here in Eugene. The Daily Emerald on January 27th wrote this, Troy Shin wrote this, influential Oregon marijuana activist dies. Marijuana activist John Walsh was best known around the University of Oregon for gathering signatures on campus or striking up conversations with students in the EMU. He was an advocate for the Students for Sensible Drug Policy and the Oregon Student Public Interest Research Group. For over 20 years, Walsh collected many signatures for several marijuana-related ballot measures, including Measure 91. It passed in 2014, allowing for the public tax and use of medical marijuana. Walsh passed away early in the morning of January 3rd, 2016, at a volunteer house for the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation. He was 60 years old and a native of Providence, Rhode Island. Most recently, a Eugene resident, Walsh traveled Oregon gathering signatures and support for various organizations working to end the marijuana prohibition. Paul Sanford, founder of THCF, which owns the house where Walsh died, knew Walsh since he first came to Oregon in 1991. John was always the first volunteer to show up to events and the last to leave. Stanford said he was a powerful force. Stanford handled the arrangements for Walsh's cremation and coordinated a memorial service in Portland on January 17th. Walsh was known for having a good memory for numbers. Stanford recalled how Walsh kept around 500 contacts without any names in his cell phone. He could recognize each contact from their numbers alone. Those who worked with Walsh said he could recount exactly how many signatures he gathered for each ballot measure. John was one of the few people in this world you couldn't say anything bad about, Stanford said. The only bad thing you could say about him was that he'd call you a lot. Anthony Johnson, director of New Approach Oregon, the group that sponsored Mission 91, said his fondest memory is of Walsh calling him to say in his unique Rhode Island accent, "Anthony, we got to get the signatures." A good signature gathering days would bring a big smile to John's face, Johnson said. That is another thing I'll always remember about him. Eugene resident Dan Kuzer, who puts on the annual Eugene Hemp Fest, was a good friend of Walsh. As far as marijuana activism went, Stanford said the two were inseparable. John was the one who got me into activism 20 years ago, said Kuzer. Kuzer is planning a Eugene memorial service at Lorax Manor near the U of O campus. The tentative date for the service is February 13th, one day after Bob Marley's birthday and one day before Oregon's, Kuzer said. I think John would have gotten a kick out of that. So that's right, the memorial is at the Lorax Manor, and it's on Alder? Oh, yeah, on Alder. And it's February 13th at 1 o'clock. And again, DanK Bagman, DanKBagman@hotmail.com if you want more information on that. But the Lorax Manor is a student co-op, and John spent a lot of time there, and so it's really fitting that we would have his memorial at that housing unit. And then this is came up. This is was in the WashingtonPost.com website, dated January 29th, written by Christopher Ingram. Obama says marijuana reform is not on his agenda for 2016. This is marijuana activists hoping for a substantial shift in federal marijuana policy in the last year of the Obama administration are likely to be disappointed. At a briefing Friday, White House Press Secretary John Earnest said any progress on marijuana reform would need to come through Congress. President Obama had signaled his position a day earlier at the House Democratic retreat in Baltimore, saying marijuana reform is not on his end-of-the-term priorities, according to Representative Steve Cohen, Democrat, Tennessee. Cohen said he asked the president whether he wanted to reschedule marijuana. The federal government considers marijuana a Schedule I controlled substance, the most dangerous class of drugs with a high potential for abuse and potentially severe psychological and/or physical dependence. Many lawmakers want to see it move to Schedule II, which acknowledges the plant's medicinal potential. Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders wants to remove marijuana from the federal list of controlled substances altogether. But Obama's answer on the rescheduling was disappointing, Cohen said in an interview. On marijuana, he gave the same answer as when I asked him 7 years ago. If you get me a bill and get on my desk, I'll probably sign it, Cohen said. At the briefing, Ernest clarified further. There are some of the Democratic Party who have urged the president to take this kind of action. The president's response was, if you feel so strong about it and you believe there is so much public support for it is that you're advocating, then why don't you pass legislation about it and we'll see what happens. Obama's approach to the issue has long frustrated activists. This isn't the first time President Obama has unnecessarily tried to pass the buck on marijuana rescheduling to Congress. Tom Angel of the pro-marijuana group Marijuana Majority said in an email, it's unacceptable and frankly embarrassing for a president who has no who has so nonchalantly acknowledged his own marijuana use to allow the federal government to continue classifying cannabis in such an inappropriate category. There is an administrative process in place for the Drug Enforcement Agency to reschedule or deschedule a drug. But as the Brookings Institute has noted, the DEA has historically not been eager to take action on this front. 4 petitions that have been initiated to reschedule marijuana or remove it from the schedules entirely have been denied or stalled by DEA for disposition times ranging from 5 to more than 20 years, the report said. The DEA is reviewing another petition to reschedule pot. But given the history, most observers are skeptical that anything will change this time around. I don't think they're doing anything, Cohen said. They've slow-walked it for all these years. He'd like to see the White House be more vocal about the process. The president could just tell them to get it done. The latest public opinion polls show broad support not just for marijuana reform, but for also outright legalization. 58% of Americans want to see marijuana use fully legalized, according to the latest Gallup polling on the issue. And a 2015 CBS News poll found that 84% of Americans support legalizing marijuana for medicinal use. Moving marijuana to Schedule II of the Controlled Substances Act is a more modest step than full legalization or legalization for medical purposes. You simply remove some of the barriers to research on uses of marijuana, barriers that the Brookings Institute recently said were stifling medical research. So that's an interesting comment. The White House press secretary said any progress on marijuana reform will need to come through Congress. And so we know that's an uphill battle. So that's why luckily we do have the initiative process in a few of the states, and Oregon is one of them, so we can get the voters' wishes known. Even though the state of Oregon, like Measure 91, the legislature is circumventing them at their pleasure, so to speak, I guess. And so it's turning out to be a real mess. But anyway, and then, then Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders wants to remove it from the federal list of controlled substances altogether. And that's obviously the most brilliant thing to do. And that's why there's a good chance it won't happen. But anyway, we can keep hoping. We can definitely keep hoping. And again, 58% of Americans want to see marijuana use fully legalized. 58%, which is over 50%. So that's sounding good. So anyway, we'll be back. I've got some more stories here to talk about, and talk a little bit more about the legislature and what they're trying to do with the Oregon marijuana laws. For one, is they would like to combine the program into one marijuana program in general, and then eliminate the medical and just make it all recreational. That's, of course, what they really like to do, and then tax the heck out of it. But anyway, we're fighting back. We need to keep the medical marijuana program for a multitude of reasons. Talk to you in the second half. I'll be here. Hope you will be too.
Do you suffer from fear of losing your election? Are you terrified that voters will discover you've done nothing to improve their lives? Maybe it's time you talk to your spin doctor about Incarcerex. In clinical trials, Incarcerex has been shown effective at reducing election-related anxieties by making voters think you're doing something about the drug problem. It's simplistic and fast-acting. If your problems continue or get worse, you can always double or triple your dose of Incarcerex. Whether it's addiction, therapeutic use, or just casual use, there's an Incarcerex plan for every American. Best of all, taxpayers, not you, will foot the bill. So talk to your spin doctor about Incarcerex today. Common side effects include loss of civil liberties, police corruption, racial injustice, increased terrorism, spread of HIV and AIDS, and violent crime. Bloated prisons are also a common side effect. Stop taking Incarcerex if bloating lasts longer than 20 years. If you're trying to balance the budget, keep families together, or protect human rights, Incarcerex may not be right for you. Do not mix Incarcerex with the Constitution or common sense. So start taking Incarcerex and keep pretending you're doing something about the drug problem.
Hello, welcome to the second half of episode 600. Got more information for you, but first of all, I wanted to say, hey, put down that bong and pick up a pencil and a piece of paper, because you're going to be hearing stuff you need to take notes on, because you need your help, especially if you're a cannabis supporter. One thing I want to let you know is, did you know that felons can vote in the state of Oregon? That's something that surprisingly a lot of people don't know about, so I try to spread the word as often as I can. Some states, felons cannot vote, but Oregon is a state that felons can vote, and there's even a law specifically saying so. So spread that word around and get registered to vote, because we have some interesting things coming up, and especially in the cannabis issues. As I mentioned, coming up February 8th at high noon in Salem, in the Salem capital, not hard to find. It's going to be a Cannabis Lobby Day at the Capitol. It'll be a large gathering of cannabis supporters, and you can be one of them. I'll be there. So first I want to talk about one of my favorite subjects to talk about. Well, to badmouth, drug testing. I've always said that the only people that benefit from drug testing is drug testing companies, and the money they're making off of it. But this is in the High Times magazine, dated October 28th, 2015, by Stony Bear, titled 7 Biggest Myths About Drug Testing. It says, no one wants to face a drug test, but anyone who tokes should be aware of some basic testing facts. You know, just in case. And if a drug test is indeed looming in your future, we suggest checking out our Drug Testing 101 guide for more in-depth advice. Regardless, you don't want to be caught blindsided by these 7 drug testing myths. Myth number 1, all companies will require you to pass a drug test. Most stoners heard throughout their college and young adult years that once they enter the real world, all employers will want you to pass a drug test. While this may be true for many entry-level positions, outside of the medical and engineering fields, most employers don't care if you do drugs or not, as long as it's not on their time. There are always exceptions, however, so tread with caution and research your industry. A side note on that is a lot of companies will say they're drug testing, and it's a process called blowing them out. They're trying to get rid of people that have a tendency that might be unreliable. And so if somebody wants to apply for a job and they're worried about a drug test, and then you tell them they have a drug test and then they don't come back, then you figure then from their thinking is, well, good, they eliminated the one that they didn't want. And so be aware of that. Harry and David is a good example of that. Years ago, they advertised wanting their seasonal workers and that they were going to be drug testing. Well, I got to thinking about that, and I thought, no, there's no way. You know, they hire over 300 people during the holiday seasons, Christmas and Thanksgiving season. They hire locally about, I think it's 300 people at least. There's no way they're going to drug test 300 people for a job that only is going to last for 6 weeks, you know. And then the drug tests are at least, what, $50 a shot, you know. So there's no way. It was just, all it was is to blow people out. So you got to be aware. So, you know, you may think of that too, and ask around, because before you go these different companies. But anyway, that's just a side note from DanK on that. Myth number 2, drinking lots of water before a test makes it harder to detect THC. This is less of a myth and more of a warning. While drinking water will dilute your urine and possibly make THC undetectable, it may also send a warning to the company testing you. Most drug tests track levels of creatinine, a byproduct of the digestive process. Diluting your urine will also dilute claritin, which can be a red flag to the company and often leads to even more extensive drug testing. Myth number 3, heavy exercise before a test will help ensure a passing result. While this may be true for every now and then smoker, if you're a heavy smoker, and if you're reading it, you likely are, then this is only helpful if you have a few weeks before the test. When you have a month to detox, heavy diet and exercise will definitely help shave some time off of your urine test. But for surprise tests, or those with less time, this idea is just a hopeful myth. Myth number 4, all drug tests are urine tests. Urine tests are the cheapest and easiest to do in mass amounts, but not all drug tests are created equal. Hair tests are the hardest to beat, although that may soon be changing thanks to some German scientists, as they can go back 90 days and are impossible to cheat, short of shaving your head, of course. If you're applying for a job that cares enough to have a hair test, you probably knew it was coming. Saliva tests are for the lucky, as they only go back about 3 days. Myth number 5, there are homemade remedies that boost your chances of passing. A Google search will show you crazy methods to pass your drug test, using pantry items, Jell-O, cranberry juice, vitamins like niacin, and many others. Most of these methods come from personal stories that trumpet their use. But really, they're no more likely to help you than casting magic spells. While the benefits might not be exactly zero, these methods are not consistent or strong enough to place any hope in. Myth number 6, secondhand smoke can make you fail a drug test. As long as you're not hotboxing with Smokey the Bear, there's no way you'll inhale enough secondhand smoke to cause you to fail a drug test. Passive inhalation doesn't bring enough THC into the system to register a positive, so no need to leave the room if someone lights up. But don't be surprised if the temptation to smoke puts you in a dangerous situation. Myth number 7, all weed stays in your system the same amount of time. Urine tests measure THC, and different strains of weed have different amounts of THC. The reg from that 4-year college student leaves your system quicker than the Omega Ultra Kush than from a Colorado dispensary. If you stuck with the former, thank your neighborhood dealer for his or her continued dedication to crap weed, which will help you more efficiently pass a drug test. If you have the latter, thank them for keeping you space level high but curse the THC levels to do so. So that's what the High Times article had to say about drug testing. I like to say that drug testing, like I said, drug testing, the only people that benefit from drug testing are drug testing companies that make the money of it. And another thing is, do cops take drug tests? Are you surprised? No. Pre-employment is the only drug test that they'll ever see, and the police unions have fought to keep them from being drug tested while on duty. So, interesting information. And I like to say that drug testing is a measure of intelligence. You got to be stupid to not pass. So, anyway, as I mentioned, we've got the rallies coming up in the Oregon Legislature, the one tomorrow, which is already passed by the time you see this, and then the one that I mentioned on the 8th. But this is, we are in very real danger of losing our medical marijuana system here in the state of Oregon, and Washington is even worse off than we are. So this is an article from the ganjapreneur.com website, January 5th, written by Graham Abbott, titled Washington State Retail Cannabis Prices at an All-Time Low. Washington's recreational cannabis prices have seen dramatic drops since state licensed retailers opened shop in 2014. From an average of 25 to 30 grams at the market's launch, prices have plummeted recently to an average of $10.34 per gram across the state, more than a 50% decrease in price. The price drop is largely attributed to a surge of new retailers, as well as some significant changes made to the taxation of wholesale cannabis last summer. Particularly, Washington legislatures did away with the original taxation system, which included a 3-tiered taxation system that taxed producers, processors, and retailers at 25% for each transaction, in favor of a single 37% excise tax that applies to all consumer sales. According to the Daily News, some retailers voluntarily took a hit on their profit margins following the tax changes in order to keep prices down and appease customers. Sometimes it feels like a race to the bottom, explained Andrew Denal, owner of 420 Holiday in Longview, Washington. Emergency rules are expected to be issued this week by the state's Liquor Control Board, the regulatory agency in charge of managing Washington's marijuana marketplace. The rules will clarify how a slew of new retailer licenses that are expected soon will help the state's medical cannabis gray market into the highly regulated recreational market. So problems will continue in Washington, and they didn't get it right, and so we were going to definitely benefit from Washington and not let it happen like up there. And then we have our own legislature that's trying to improve the law themselves. So it's just a real mess. But again, we need you to come to that rally up in Salem on February 13th and Monday, February 8th at high noon at Oregon. And that's only 60 miles from here. So get the friends together and get up there. We need the bodies. We need the numbers. I've seen it work. It's just like courts. It's like court support. When you're in court, you need people in the courtroom in support, so they see that you've got friends and people, and they're being watched. I've seen it work. It helps, and so that's what we need to do here. We need, as we say, boots on the ground. You know, we need bodies. So, and it's only 60 miles away, like I said. So, dankbagman@hotmail.com. Get a hold of me, and we need people to fight. That's the whole thing. Yeah, Measure 91 passed, and it's legal, and that's all well and good, but that was a battle. That was a big battle, and we won big. But the war goes on, and right now the war is going on in Salem. So just like they've tried to destroy our medical program over the years, they're still working at it. So we'll talk about it more next time. We'll see you then. Thanks.